For today's daily speed model, I made this ladybug. As always, if you have a challenge for me, leave a comment down below. So to make this ladybug, I started with finding the reference and the idea. I didn't start out wanting to make a ladybug. The prompt was just bug, and then I just googled bug and then picked this ladybug I liked. I began by blocking out the basic shape using a UV sphere, which I rotated, cut it in half, scaled, and then I used proportional editing to have it sort of taper towards the back. Then I shaped the area for the head. After that, I selected some faces for the wings and the head. I used Shift-D to duplicate those and separated them into separate objects. I added a mirror modifier to make the wings, just to make it easier on myself, and I added a solidify modifier for the wings and the face. I added a shade smooth and a bevel modifier to these as well, and called those pretty much done for their mesh. I created the false eyes the same way as the wings and head and added a subsurf. The head is just plain black, and then I have this bump here, which is made from a noise texture, a texture coordinate, and a mapping node to control the scale. The wings are fundamentally the same as this head, but there's slightly more involved with creating the spots. I promise it's not as complicated as it looked. For the dots, start off with a Voronoi, plug it into a color ramp, and then add the color from a noise texture with a scale in the vector math node to limit the influence to create some little warbles in the spots. Then use that as the factor for a mixed color node. For the red texture, it's basically the same thing as the Voronoi, but with a wave texture instead of a Voronoi texture, and a similar noise plus color ramp plus mixed color plus noise plus vector scaling to make it look a little less flat. For the last 8 minutes of the render challenge, I decided the ladybug needed to sit on a leaf, so I made this quick leaf, which I made with a plane. I made some loop cuts and then used proportional editing to scale it down to create sort of the tip of the leaf. I then added some subdivisions with Control E and then D. And then I grabbed some of the faces down using proportional editing again. I added some metaballs with a glass shader as just a quick water droplet effect. Now the last thing I did is try to make the leaf textured with like a procedural shader with veins and stuff like that. But what I came up with looked horrible. I think I could have done it with more time, but I gave up with that. I just plugged in a Voronoi and set the distance to edge, and the detail turned way up, and I plugged that into the bump. It didn't look too great, but it looked better than before. At that point I was out of time, but I just added an HDRI for some lighting and called it a day. Overall, I think I'm actually pretty happy with this. The ladybug is kind of just floating in a void, which I'm not too happy about. I would have liked to add maybe some dirt in the background, maybe more leaves, but I'm reasonably okay with how it turned out. I think my texture game is definitely improving, but otherwise, if you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe. Other than that, I'll see you tomorrow.